Hey guys, it's Luke from Mix It Made Simple. In today's video, I'm going to show you 5 free plugins that you can download and use in your tracks to help you mix and master your music. At the end, I'm also going to show you a little bonus plugin for those of you who don't have Ableton. These are all plugins that I have students in my mixing course, Mix Immersions, download. They're all really great to use. If you can only afford to use the plugins in your DAW, so stock plugins, and you can't really buy any external plugins right now, these are really great free plugins that will get you a long way without having to buy anything. So before you get started, if you're an EDM producer and you are really wanting to get better at mixing and mastering fast, if it's something that you've been struggling with or you just can't seem to get your tracks for that professional level sound that you've been trying to get to, then go ahead and look in the description below. You can book a call with me and we can get you enrolled in my course, Mix Immersions. It's a really immersive course and includes like a coaching element with it as well to really help you get to the next level as fast as possible. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump in the DAW. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you these plugins right now. Okay, so the first plugin we're going to be talking about is a really cool plugin. It's called Smexoscope, which is an oscilloscope. And typically oscilloscopes are used so you can just look at the waveform of a signal. And I originally got this so that I could check if something was in phase or not. But typically nowadays, if I'm going to check something in phase, I just usually use my ears. If I'm layering 2 drums, for example, and if it sounds better when I flip the phase, then I just go with that. I don't feel the need to have to visually look at it. But in this case, what I have my students do, and what I use a lot myself, is if you want to visualize, if you're doing something to a signal, especially when it comes to clipping. And so I use this for clipping. If you don't have something like K-clip, which can cost you, I think it's a couple $100s, or one of the other clippers out there, what you can do is you can use one of your free stock clippers. So in Ableton, for example, the saturator is a clipper. If you use analog clip or digital clip, you're going to be clipping the signal when it gets past this little line right here. And the reason I'm using Smexoscope, instead of just like doing it blindly, what we want to do when we're clipping for the purposes of being able to bring something up in loudness, we want to do it in a really transparent way. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'll play a portion of this track. This is like the drop section of this track. And I'll just go ahead and play you the track as a whole. And then I'm going to show you how I can use clipping here with the Smexoscope in a second. So go ahead and listen to the track for a sec. So it's this really cool, like upbeat, like I don't know if it's like Future House or something like that. I don't know. I'm mixing it for a client, and it's really an exciting track. But what I've done is that I have this, let's see, this track right here, this bass track. And so if we take a look at it, if I solo it and you look without any clipping on it, so go ahead and take a look at the waveform. Whoops. So you'll notice, you see these little peaks that are going up, these little tiny peaks? Well, what I want to do with the clipper is I just want to like shave those off basically. Because if I shave those off, it's going to allow me to push the loudness when it comes to like mastering, for example. If we want to get to a certain loudness level, then we need to have a good mix, good use of like compression, but also clipping is really going to help this. And so if I just turn the saturator on, watch what happens to the signal and then listen and see if you can even tell any difference in the sound. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to play it, I'm going to go back and forth, look at it, but also try to hear, see if you hear any difference at all. I'm going to turn it on. Off. Now on. And you can see the waveform, how it's being clipped off like that. And this allows us to now push this even further. And then even going into the group, this bass group, I'll even have some, I have them turned off right now, but I'll even have like clippers on there so that when I get to the master channel, I can push it even louder. And so this is a really great way. Smexoscope, you can do all sorts of stuff with this. You can, I'll Like I like to use it for clipping and visualizing for that. But then, you know, if you want to look and see what you're doing with compressors, you can put this on anything you want, and you can actually see the signal's waveform and see exactly what you're doing to it. And it's really helpful. Definitely always use your ears. Go with your ears. Like that should be like your main tool is your ears. But the Smexoscope is a really great tool to be able to visualize stuff. So highly recommend getting that. Let's go on to the next plugin. All right, so the next plugin, we'll just go over this one real quick, is the Youlean loudness meter. Now this plugin is really great because it's free, and it just allows you to show, you know, if you use this like on your master channel, for example, it can show the loudness measurements in LUFS, which stands for loudness units full scale, and it's kind of like the go-to, the standard measurement of loudness nowadays, which means it's the a way of measuring loudness that takes into account human hearing. And so, for example, we tend to hear more mid-range, high-range stuff more clearly. So if you had a track that had a really high sub, like a lot of sub energy in there, and you were kind of struggling to get to loudness level you want, well, it's probably because there's too much sub energy. You need to bring that down. And you know, you need to have like a well-balanced mix. And so when you're at the mastering stage, this is a great plugin. So if I go ahead and I play that track again, you can see I'm getting up to a really, really loud for this track. That's kind of what I was going for. And in fact, I might even getting a little bit too loud. I typically like to go between -8 and -6, but this is a really high energy, really, you know, high energy kind of in your face type track. And so, you know, I'm sort of okay with it getting up to this loud. But what we have here is we have like, it shows short-term LUFS, which is measuring the LUFS within the like a 3-second span. We've got integrated, which is the overall average of the entire track, and then we have, you know, other stuff on here that I actually don't even use this to its full potential. But you know, certain DAWs, most DAWs don't come with an loudness measurement tool like this that includes LUFS, and so I like to say to just get you know, the Youlean loudness meter. If you buy a limiter like Pro L2, it's going to have LUFS in there as well. But if you don't have that, if you don't have it, and if you plan to get it later on, in the meantime, you can download Youlean loudness meter and be able to check your loudness on the master channel. And it's really great, and it's free. So there you go. On to the next plugin. All right, so this next plugin is called Saturation Knob, and it's by a company named SoftTube. And it's a really great little saturation plugin, and it's really cool because it has 3 different styles that you can use, and I'm going to go ahead and show you these in a second. So you can use this for saturation, but then if you crank this knob up, you can get some distortion. I typically like to use Decapitator for my saturation and distortion plugin go-to, but I actually will use this as well because what I think is it's nice to have different saturators on different parts of your track, because each saturation plugin that you use is going to have like its own character, its own unique sound. So by distributing different saturators throughout your track, like throughout different parts of your track, it's just going to add some nice varied color and character throughout your track. And so I'm going to show you this right now on just on this bass. And so you can do it on anything. You can put on vocals or instruments or anything like that. But on bass here, I'll go ahead and I'll just play this and I'll show you what we can do to the sound. So I'm going to have it on the neutral setting right now. So right now I have a little bit of saturation. I'm just going to be adding like some harmonics to it, but then watch what happens if I just crank it up. So that's really distorted, and you know, if that's a sound that you want to go for, then you can go for it. And so I'm going to go and play it. I'm going to go through these different options here. So you can hear the keep high option is like a lot more gritty and like forward sounding. I don't know how to really explain it, but yeah, it's cool that you have these different options. And you know, you can use saturation on things like bass like that to like really crank up the distortion. But I'll also use saturation, Like I might throw it on a group of instruments and I might just add a little bit of saturation just to add some nice like analog warmth and harmonics to all of the instruments at the same time. The way I kind of visualize this is almost like it's like you're running your instruments or your different tracks through like a analog console or something like that. So that's another way you can do it. And then you can also put it on vocals as well. So that's a saturation knob. I highly recommend you go get it after this video. All right, so this next plugin is called Span, and it's by Voxengo, and it's a great free plugin, and I use this as an alternative, a free alternative to use instead of like Metric AB, and I recommend for my students who don't want to purchase something like Metric AB, they can go ahead and grab this, and I'm going to show you how I can set this up so that we can use this to help us reference a reference track. I'm sure this plugin can honestly probably do a lot more, but I like to use it to reference, pinpoint different frequency areas of our track, but also reference the, spectrum of our track compared to our reference. And so I'm going to show you how we can set that up right now. So first of all, you need to grab a reference track. Just create like an audio track in Ableton and throw the reference on there. And you want to make sure to route it outside of the master, because if it's routed through the master, then obviously anything that on your mastering chain is going to affect the reference, and you don't want that. And then what we want to do, we want to go to Span, and I've labeled it reference. You go down to the little sidechain input and then find it. So I got reference right here. And now it's going to, if I go, it's going to go into the plugin, which I'm going to set up in a second. First, I'll show you, I'm going to go ahead and change this to a different color like blue. So if I play this right now, you'll see our track. And one thing you can do actually is if you go to settings, you can make the block size a higher resolution. You don't want to go too high because then it's going to be not very responsive, but I like to go to like 8192. And then now if you look at it, it's just a little bit higher res. And so you can choose different resolution sizes if you want. But now what we do is we go to routing, go to input routing, select 3, select 4 right here, and then we go to group names, and then I like to rename this like master, and then we can do reference for the reference track, and then we can go get out of here, and then if you go right here to this, that's our track, or then we can go to here, and then you can change. I like to change it to a different color, like red, for example, because then it really stands out. And so now I go to master. That's our track. This one, that you can't hear it, but it's playing the reference track. And now what we can do is we can go, and then I go back to master. If you go to this underlay feature, click this, go like that. And now if I play it, just like that, you can look at, and if I match the, I'm going to want to match the volume level. So if I go to like the drop section, or wherever the drop section is at, and I want to kind of line it up with my drop section and then match the loudness levels. And then that way I can actually look, you want to use your ears is the most important thing when you're referencing. So listen to the reference really carefully that way, but then you can also use Span to look at the waveform and see visually what's going on. Because sometimes you don't know, you might not be hearing something that well, and you might think like, oh man, why does their track sound a little bit more punchy than mine? And maybe the waveform looks different, or the spectrum looks different, like in one certain area, and then you can go and you can pinpoint. And so if I go like this in our track, I play it. Now if I hold down, or Alt, or what is it, Control, like this, hold down Control, and if I play the track, I can go like this. And I can sweep through, and that's another really great tool that Span allows you to do if you're having any issues with your track. And so that's Span. There's probably more you can do with it, but this is how I use it. And if you need to, I highly recommend referencing, reference. That's like one of the best ways to get to a professional level as fast as possible. And this is one of the great free plugin that you can use to get this set up and be able to reference and also visualize your track compared to a reference. All right, on to the next plugin. All right, so last on our list is the Kilohertz Transient Shaper. And this is kind of like a bonus in itself, because when you get this plugin, you're getting it in a pack called the Essentials pack, which is like, has a bunch of free plugins in it, which is really cool. But I like their Transient Shaper a lot. It's free, and I actually find that I use this more than any other. I only have one other Transient Shaper, but I use this one all the time because I like that it has this visual element to it. And so what a Transient Shaper is a way to increase the attack or lower the sustain of a signal without using something like compression. And so I'm going to show you an example of how I can use it right here. And I'm going to show you like kind of a, that it's really cool. I learned it watching a disclosure video one time. Basically what you can do is, say if you have a, and I'm going to show you a couple ways of using the Transient Shaper, but if you have like a drum loop like this, well, say if you wanted to kind of take out like the reverb of it, or take out a lot of the sustain, what you can do is you can actually take a Transient Shaper, pull down the sustain, and you might hear a difference. Let's go ahead and play it. But then you can actually stack these on top of each other. You can get up to like 3 of them in a row, and then listen to the difference here that it makes. So I have all of these just doing the same thing. And now I'm going to go ahead and go back and forth. Now check this out. So here's without the Transient Shapers on. Now with it. So you can hear it kind of just makes it like, it takes this loop that I'm using and it kind of keeps only the little important elements that I wanted, and it kind of gets rid of some of the like reverb and some of the background kind of noise and sustain that I don't necessarily need. And I think that's a really cool way to use this Transient Shaper. And of course, there's other ways you can use it. Let's say you wanted to shape a kick. Well, you can push up the attack, lower the sustain. And that's one way of using a Transient Shaper. And another way is, one of my favorite things to do is on pianos. So if I take it to this piano here, actually I already have one on there. So I have my piano here. So I can go ahead and increase the attack. See what happens if I lower the attack. So you can hear that it's really increasing that initial transient of the piano, making it pop. And we can achieve this by using compression. A lot of times I'll use compression and the Transient Shaper at the same time. But yeah, Transient Shaper is a great way to shape the tone of a sound without actually compressing it. And so, yeah, I'd highly recommend getting one of these and then using them in your track. All right, our last little bonus plugin here is going to be the X for Records version of OTT. And so if you don't have Ableton, what Ableton has is Ableton has a multi-band compressor, which has this version of compression called OTT, which stands for over the top. And it's just like a really fun, useful way of having some extreme compression, both downwards and upwards compression on a track. And so if I show you on this bass, for example, I'm going to go ahead and it comes, if I throw it on here, if I have the bass by itself, let's go ahead and listen. Whoops. Let's go ahead and turn it off. So if I throw the plugin on here and I have the depth up to 100%, it's just going to smash it and it's not very useful. What you can do is I like to go ahead and pull this down. And then also, these are basically the thresholds. You can play with these, and then we have upwards and downward compression here. And the way I like to use OTT is it's kind of a way to where it almost if you want to take a sound and make it almost 3D sounding, it kind of gives it like a tonal, it kind of adds some like high-end tonal shaping to it. And it's almost like it's lifting it up because you've got that upwards compression, making the quiet parts louder, and you've got the downwards compression, compressing the loud parts, and then you're kind of squashing it. And I just kind of use it as like a tonal effect in a way. If you don't have OTT, I'd go to Exford Records, go ahead and download it. If you don't have Ableton, I have it installed in Ableton, plus I've got Ableton. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed all these free plugins. Go ahead, look in the description below and go download them and, you know, use them in your mixes and masters right now and see if they help you to get more of a professional level sound. All right, I'll see you again next time.